The final round of the Superbet Chess Classic, the world champion is in action, and this time he's taking on the one and only Fabiano Caruana. Two of the best classical players in the world of chess clash each other over the board in a classical game. What could be more exciting than that for the purists out there? Knight f3, knight f6, pawn to g3 played, bishop comes out to g2. Gukesh going for a setup with rich possibilities where black has many different options to play. And pawn to d5 played by Fabi right into the center. Bishop g2 played. This tournament hasn't particularly been great for Gukesh, who has lost 2 games, won 1 and 5 draws, while Caruana has had 1 win and 7 draws. So he has been very solid. If he wins here, he could very well reach the other players in the lead and then set up a tie break there. So bishop e7, and from that perspective, this is a very important game for Fabi. So d4, Gukesh may be transposing it back to Catalan now if he pushes his pawn to c4. But instead he goes knight to e5. The knight jumps into the center, and this is not a very common move. You can see already Caruana going back in his chair. He pushes the pawn to c5. Why would Gukesh play his knight to e5? Well, this seems to be his preparation. He wants to play something that's different. D takes c5 taken. And here if you take back with the bishop, I believe he wants to strike the center with c4. So that's the idea here. And instead Fabi goes knight to d7. So he's asking a question to the knight on e5 and also threatening to take the pawn on c5. How is Gukesh going to deal with this? He plays his bishop out to f4. An excellent move. Just defending the knight here in the center. Knight takes knight played. Bishop takes on e5. And now I think it's time to take this pawn. No, he actually goes knight d7. And maybe pd6 is possible. But instead Gukesh goes bishop c3. And the speed at which he's playing shows that this is all his preparation. Bishop takes on c5. And guys, now pawn to e4 is what Gukesh would most likely do here. Yes, he plays it. Pawn to e4. And you can see that this bishop is placed on this diagonal. This bishop is placed on this diagonal. Black has to tread carefully here in the opening because Gukesh is well prepared. And at the same time, this does look a little bit of a scary position. He takes the pawn. And black has to figure out the question of the bishop on c8. If he doesn't activate that bishop, he would get into trouble. Now this bishop is looking here as well as on b7. Knight f6 played. I don't think you want to trade queens because that brings the rook on the open file. So Gukesh, after a small think here for 10 minutes or so, goes bishop f3. And I guess he's stopping knight g4 ideas in the future. Queen e7. Fabi wants to keep the queens on the board and goes queen e7 with the idea of rook b8, rook d8, maybe rook b8, b6, bb7 also on the cards. Queen comes up to e2. Till the bishop on c8 doesn't develop, white will have a small edge. b7 will be under pressure. He goes rook e8. A very interesting move here. Maybe he's aiming for e5, e4. Do you think so? And Gukesh is like, sorry Fabi, I'm not allowing you to go e5 because that would activate your bishop here. So knight to d5 played by Fabi. He's okay with take and this position because it opens up his bishop, and bishop goes to d2. So Gukesh keeping the pieces on the board. Now maybe c4 in the air, a3, b4 expansion there. Knight b4 played. Caruana attacks the pawn on c2. A good idea is to trade, but he goes bishop c1. Oh, look at Gukesh. So ambitious here. This bishop, by the way, on c1 went to f4, went to e5, went to c3, went to d2, went to c1. Pawn comes up to c3. Now attacking the knight on b4. And knight comes back to d5. So the knight jumps to d2. He's angling to go to e4, knight b3 here. There's pawn to b6. And the bishop intends to come out to a6 to attack here. Knight e4 played. And Fabi actually has managed to get his bishop out there, which is very, very nice. A good move, bishop a6. And now queen to c2 is met with rook a c8. Just taking the rook out from this diagonal. Well, can Gukesh chop off the bishop? Yes, he takes. And now he has the bishop pair. And also the d3 square is weak, but the knight is no way jumping there. Can we say that Gukesh has a small edge here? The only thing against it is that this bishop doesn't have great squares to go to. Oh, he plays bishop e3 finally, but now he can take here with the knight. And Fabi takes, knight takes e3, rook takes e3. And we have the same color bishop position. Caruana has these two pawns here. And Gukesh has a majority on the queen side. White has a majority in the center. Rook d1, trading rooks. And now g6 played just so that the king has a luft. There are no back rank issues. Maybe rook e1 back seems like a good idea here. He goes pawn to b3. And rook takes rook. Queen takes rook. And now queen goes back to c7. He goes pawn to c4, Gukesh here. He brings his pawn up, and now pawn to b5 played by black. He takes, pawn takes pawn. And who's really making progress here is a big question. Is it white, who now has 2 versus 1? Is it black, who is very well placed with his pieces? h4 by Gukesh. Maybe eyeing for h5, h6. That pawn on h6 can be a big thorn in black's camp. h5 played, limiting the pawn here on the king side. King comes up to g2. And rook comes up to d8 to attack the queen. And Gukesh's queen has to find a good square because the bishop has taken away this square, the queen has taken away this square. It goes queen e1, but doesn't this allow queen c2? That does look scary, yeah, queen c2. But then the pawn hangs here, so can't do that. Bishop c6 played, trading another pair of pieces. Queen e2. And bishop comes up to d5. The bishop is well placed in the center now. And maybe Gukesh wants to go rook d3. Oh, this is a good point, that if it goes into a queen endgame, black will be in small pressure, under pressure, because there is an outside passer. And in queen endgames, having a passer is a huge asset. So bishop takes bishop. And he takes with the pawn. Isn't white slightly better here? Because now I take this pawn. Yeah, I'm pawn up. I can keep the pawn with rook d4. And d5 pawn is slightly weak. But Fabi is like, oh, I'm playing d4 first. I'm not going to allow you to blockade it. It's a great move. Queen f3 by Gukesh. And now you could attack this pawn somehow. Maybe queen c4. Place queen c4 here. Attacking this. Does Gukesh push forward with a5? Yes, he pushes forward with a5 on the board. This has been such a evenly matched battle here. Queen a6 blocking the pawn. Also attacking on e5, a5. And he goes queen d1. Well, but this leads to equality, I believe, because queen takes, Rook takes d8, d4, rook takes, queen takes, and then the a2 pawn is hanging. So Fabi takes the pawn. He takes on d4. Rook takes. And queen takes. And queen takes a2 coming in. That's a draw, guys. That's equal. Dead equal. Queen d8 check. King g7. And this is now like both players know that we have to repeat here because there's no way to make progress. I must say that this game had a very, very interesting opening, and the early middle game was filled with a lot of possible ideas for both sides. But in the end, Fabiano navigated through the new position well. Gukesh couldn't put enough pressure on him. Fabiano pauses the clock, calls the arbiter that there is threefold repetition. They shake hands and the game is drawn. So Gukesh ends the tournament with 4 points out of 9. He does lose a bit of rating here. Caruana on 5 out of 9. He doesn't reach the leaders who are on 5.5 points. But to see both the top players, you can see Gukesh saying maybe I could have brought my knight to c3 perhaps. But it was really nice to see both the top classical players in the world of chess like Caruana and Gukesh fight it out against each other. And for Gukesh, this was not a great event, but good practice before he plays the Norway chess, where he's going to face Caruana again, but also Magnus, Hikaru, Arjun and Wei. It's an exciting event to look forward to. For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off.